Yeah, Sneh, we can start now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sneh Sumani on behalf of Her World India. Would like to welcome all of you to the Her World India Talk Show series, where we would be discussing access to healthcare in rural India and the treatment of patients through telecommunication technology. Mandatory social distancing and the lack of effective treatments have made telemedicine the safest interactive system between patients, both infected and uninfected, and doctors in the current situation prevalent across the country due to the COVID 19 pandemic. We feel delighted to be hosting this show in collaboration with Policy Center Gender Lab. Policy Center and Gender Lab provides research opportunities in the sphere of gender studies, social sciences, and policy shape-up. So today we have with us Ms. Neha Verma, co-founder and CEO Intel Health, a technology nonprofit that develops mobile solutions for improving access to primary health care for underserved communities. Ms. Neha also holds a master degree in applied health sciences informatics. She has a keen focus in improving primary health care. We welcome you, ma'am.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We also have with us the founder and editor-in-chief of Her World India, Ms. Rakhi Bakshi. She is a veteran media professional who has served as a media advisor to Lok Sabha Speaker and was also a show host on Raj Sabha TV. She has covered the Kargil War and the Iraq War. She has worked closely with many social organizations. Her World India is a brainchild of Ms. Bakshi. Her World India strives for an inclusive and gender equal world, the platform where social and contemporary issues get featured. We welcome you, ma'am. The talk show would be moderated by Ms. Bakshi. During the session, I request the attendees to kindly keep themselves on mute and turn off their videos. If anyone has any question, they are requested to put them in the chat box. All the questions would be taken up at the end of the session. Now, without much ado, I request Rakhi ma'am to commence the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sneh, and how much of a support you have been this talk show. You've been managing and doing a whole lot of things, and that's what my young team here at Her World India is doing. I'm really thankful to my team, and on behalf of Her World India, this evening on Saturday, I welcome you all, brothers and sisters, friends and well-wishers, ladies and gentlemen. Another edition, and we are again talking to a very, very interesting and esteemed speaker. I'm truly, truly delighted to have her here. Somebody who's been introduced, but Neha Verma brings with her not only about heading a technology-led company, but also solutions which are really vital and significant at this point of time when we are handling a crisis of pandemic of COVID-19. And we're looking at some innovative solutions also to reach out to a wider range of people, especially in India, where the demographic challenge is something that we are dealing with right now. So IntelliHealth, which is about telemedicine solutions and which Neha Verma leads right now, the CEO and founder. We are going to talk to her not only about her journey, but also as to how her leadership has helped to bring about this change. Neha, please talk to us about your journey.
Thank you so much for having me here, Rakhi ma'am. It was an interesting journey for me. I mean, I came from a background in technology. I've been a serial entrepreneur. My first company was, in building dental technologies, and that's when really I realized that I love working in tech. But it is very fulfilling when that tech goes out and makes a difference. And so when, about 5 years ago, I met my co-founders, Dr. Soumya Acharya and Amal Afroz Alam, and we met during a master's program here in the US at Johns Hopkins University. Where we were really looking at how do we solve this challenge of access to healthcare in rural areas. 70% of our country lives in rural areas. And for us, it was always about health is a basic human right. I need to be able to keep myself and my family healthy and happy. And if we as a society are not creating systems where people living in rural areas are able to access this basic human right, then we're really missing out somewhere. It was around the time when telecommunications was making a huge inroads in rural areas. Geo was everywhere, so everybody was getting on the internet. Smartphones as well as feature phones had really gotten into rural India, and so there was this opportunity now to deliver healthcare using mobile phones. telemedicine is an obvious solution to the problem of geographic health access. And when we started, it was all about understanding what the impact is of that geographic health access on rural India, and especially on women, because men.
I would like to ask you, Neha, that, of course, you started understanding that there is a digital revolution happening in India also now, and we are reaching a wider network of people who are using internet solutions. But talking about primary healthcare and reaching out to rural India, don't you think telemedicine still is an idea which we are talking much in advance, and it is not really something that rural Indian folks understand very well or can access very well?
Yeah, we are definitely still early in the penetration of telemedicine as the norm of providing healthcare in rural India. I mean, for the longest time, who has been delivering healthcare in rural India? It's been government primary healthcare centers, NGOs, and for a large majority, quacks, unlicensed medical providers, as well as faith healers, a whole bevy of systems. So the entrenched ways that people access healthcare are still very much there, and telemedicine is just entering in, just making a shift. But as you can see, rural India is moving to digital means for many other things, banking, for accessing their digital identity, and as other systems also strengthen, as the digital revolution happens in other sectors as well, healthcare is an obvious choice. Of course, when we start working in rural communities, there is a lot of education we have to do in these areas to drive acceptability, that even if a doctor is not physically present here, over the phone, over a video call, over an audio call, I can still get good treatment for my healthcare condition. So you're right in that it is still early and there is a lot more work to be done. We primarily work as a tech company, we work to empower these healthcare providers. We work with governments, we work with NGOs, we provide them technology, we provide them implementation support services so that they can set up these telemedicine projects. But it's all down to, at the end of the day, we create community champions in rural areas, and it's them who really share and drive acceptance in these communities towards telemedicine. So yes, it will be a while until it becomes ubiquitous, but I think a lot of the pandemic has really accelerated the acceptance of telemedicine.
Okay, so just a sec, I'm back to you again. Sneh, you can just start.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you again, is that, what does it really do? Because the rural people would really, as I understand, as a reporter, I've visited those areas. And I understand that people, sometimes want to really talk to a doctor. They talk to ASHA workers. They, in fact, sometimes really talk to them in a very personalized manner. They would like to tell their symptoms. Is telemedicine really friendly in that sense, you think, to reach out to rural people, especially, I mean, with due respect, there is literacy happening, there is education happening, but there is less awareness, isn't it? So how would you really describe your experience of reaching out to some of these people?
So the first is, like, when you think of telemedicine, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is there's this app which I have to download on my phone and I talk to or chat with a doctor. But telemedicine actually has several forms. The kind that we see when we think about Practo or Liberate, that's called direct to patient telemedicine. But a stronger form of telemedicine for rural areas is called provider to provider telemedicine. So that's the area that we largely work in, where most of our programs are in provider to provider telemedicine, which is this ASHA worker or this ANM or the community health officer in the rural area. On their phone, they have an application through which they can facilitate a consultation with a remote doctor. So when the patient comes to them, since they are a nurse or they're an ASHA worker trained up to a certain extent, they can handle some conditions. But for anything more than that, they have to refer the patient to an urban hospital. But what happens oftentimes during that referral, if I'm a farmer, I have to leave my daily wages. I have to go. If I'm a woman, I need someone to come with me, or I have to arrange for someone to take care of children. I have home responsibilities. And all of these financial and geographic barriers mean what happens when I get a referral? I don't go anywhere. So when this, it results in, that proverbial stitch in time saves 9. you end up delaying your care, and then next thing you know, a small problem has become a very big health issue for you. But telemedicine can really bridge that gap, where if you have like a local ASHA worker or a local ANM who you trust, who is that front facing to you, he or she can collect your information, share it with a doctor. So I think creating telemedicine projects that inspire patient trust is so important, and that has been one of our big focuses. So we work a lot in provider to provider. Another kind of telemedicine, of course, is helplines, phone helplines. I think that takes a lot more trust, because think about who you and I go to access healthcare. That doctor who we have known from years, or a family member has recommended a certain doctor. So creating trust is a very important aspect of making sure people understand and accept telemedicine services. It's also important to see, when we work in a new community, we see early on not so much acceptance. Then a few people will start using it. Then when they start to realize it's working and I'm getting a good experience, in fact, what we see is patients start to realize I'm getting a more dignified experience and a more convenient experience over telemedicine. Because otherwise, I have to take the whole day off. I have to travel by bus or public transport. I have to get somewhere. I have to wait 2 hours in that doctor's waiting clinic. And the doctor will see me for what, 5 minutes, scribble a prescription I can barely understand. Then I have to go somewhere else for medicines. But here I can walk very closely. Like most of our patients walk to a telemedicine center. They can get there within 15 to 17 minutes. That's our average time to get to a center, to get to a doctor. For a woman in rural India, then not having to wait in the sun, it's a very dignified experience. So they have to first try it, and then they start to realize that it is something that they would opt in. So we always see it takes a good 6 months to a year for it to be accepted in a rural community. But when it does, you see it.
I'm confused about the fact that now the government of India is really looking at it. So National Digital Health Mission, which has been announced, talks about, I think, these kind of solutions, because it knows that, the kind of population that we have and the kind of healthcare solutions that one has to provide, I think needs, all kinds of innovative solutions. Telemedicine seems to be a very vibrant one. So I'm glad that you should take a lot of positive cue from there. But taking on from there, how does it take its path ahead? I mean, in India, which is now at this point of time looking very seriously at healthcare and the infrastructural support that it should have. What is your feeling, since you also go abroad, and as we understand that you're also learning from other countries' experience, as to how India should actually catch the spirit of connecting through tele solutions?
I think India actually is at the forefront of this. We have the largest government-led telemedicine program in the world, actually the largest telemedicine program in the world, with eSanjeevani, which is a government-led initiative. It's crossed over, about to cross over 10 million consultations. eSanjeevani is a platform that we work with, we support, and we really find it's an amazing government initiative that connects peripheral rural health and wellness centers to tertiary hospitals, as well as direct to patient application. So actually, the world is taking the cue from India, I would say. So, if you look at the World Health Organization's recent policy reports, lesser than 20% of countries have a formal telemedicine policy or law that legalizes telemedicine. And most of those were just developed countries, the US, UK, countries in Europe. And India formally adopted legalizing telemedicine in March of 2020 when the pandemic hit. And it's a very well put guideline that really accelerated the space. I think, of course, we have a lot of learning to do from countries like the US, which have been using telemedicine for a very long time. And I think there are many cues that we can take, including doctor bodies in creation of better clinical guidelines of what can or cannot be managed on telemedicine. Of course, everything can't be treated on telemedicine. Things that can be well treated are things like managing my diabetes, managing hypertension. But there are obviously things which involve physical examination, which you can't which you cannot do over telemedicine. You do have to refer the patient then. So those kinds of protocols or creation of those guidelines is probably something that's more sophisticated in other countries, and something I'm sure India will get to as we do. But as of now, in terms of implementation, India is really, a country that that is really leading in terms of using telemedicine to mitigate the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic.
And how are you looking at the market as a company, the kind of competition, the kind of reach you should have? What does it look like now?
I think the market is very interesting. Of course, you have your large players like these direct-to-patient apps that serve urban areas, largely serve people who have smartphones. And then there's organizations like us that work for the people who don't have as stronger digital access, and where we have to work through intermediaries. There's many other interesting applications and companies working in telemedicine, like connecting ICUs with more specialist care, connecting specialists with general practitioners. It's a very wide landscape of solutions. I think where we kind of fit in is working for rural areas, working even within rural areas, working at the very last mile, the most hard to reach, tribal populations, people living in mountainous areas, people living in conflict zones. And then I think another aspect that we work on is making global goods. So all of our platforms are open source, and that's something I see as a market. I would love to see more in the market of, because when you make platforms that are free and are open, that's the best way for you to create social impact and really reach the people who are not very well reached. So I think right now the market is very good at reaching that average digital consumer like you and me, but we have a lot more work to do to reach people at the last mile.
Very inspiring, Neha. I'm truly, truly delighted once again to have you, a woman leader, so to say, especially in an area like healthcare, which really needs, a lot of attention at this point of time. That now that we've seen second wave of COVID-19, we are looking at the third wave and how we have understood the whole crucial significance of healthcare and the attention that either the authorities provide to it or the people who look at it and deal with it more seriously. So doing some excellent work in this area, our appreciation for you, Neha. But going on from there, I think, what would you say about the kind of support that we really need now in healthcare? I talked about infrastructure. Do you think more budget would help? Do you think more ideas should come? Now we are looking at making task forces and things like that. What are your suggestions, inputs should be done to really tackle the issues and challenges of healthcare much more efficient?
I think pandemics exacerbate problems that already exist in society, and the pandemic more than anything laid bare how much more investment was needed in healthcare systems. As a country, we don't invest as much as we should of our budget in GDP, and it shows now, right? Like COVID has decimated and has created a huge strain on an already under functioning healthcare system. And so obviously more budget is needed, more investment is needed in underlying infrastructure. I think during the pandemic, there was a lot of investment into things that were needed for COVID, like oxygen concentrators. I'm not saying that should not have happened. That should absolutely happen. But more investment is also needed in the underlying infrastructure. So many of our healthcare centers are understaffed, under-resourced, don't have as many doctors hired in these systems. You don't have equipment, you don't have technology. Unless those underlying infrastructure is not invested in, then investing in just oxygen concentrators is putting a band-aid on a larger problem. And not meaning to say that band-aid isn't required, but you need to have a more diversified investment into all aspects of healthcare systems. I think, of course, there are a lot more areas where telemedicine needs to be invested in. So we recently started working in post-COVID care. So after someone is discharged from a hospital with severe or moderate COVID illness, we still don't know what the long-term impacts and complications are of that. And so we recently started a helpline along with the government of with Japai, which is run by Japaibo. It's called Nishtha Swasth Sampark, with governments of Jharkhand and Madhya Pradesh, to provide care to patients who have been discharged after hospital. So just yesterday, one of these helpline agents connected with someone who lives in a village and has been having cardiac complications after COVID. And if not intervened by a cardiologist, these are long-term impacts. So there are so many use cases also that we still need to explore, whether it's using telemedicine to support patients who are infected and providing care to them at home, whether it's patients who have been recovered and need help with post-COVID recovery, whether it's mental health. That's another very big area where telemedicine is a very strong can provide strong impact, or whether it's care for non-communicable diseases, pregnant women. That was another area that we looked at during COVID, which is that more women started to give birth at home. Women started to miss their antenatal care visits.
Neha, and you already started talk about it, but women's health and access to healthcare for women. This is one subject that we need to focus on and say, is it really happening the way it should?
There's obviously more work to be done there. I mean, and it starts with more women decision makers at the table, at the top, making policy decisions about what should be invested in. But I'll give you an example of a patient who I met recently when I was in Gujarat. She was a day laborer, living in like a ramshackle hut right by the field. She's a migrant worker in a district in Morbi in Gujarat where we work, and had been having an infection, a vaginal infection that had been persistent from 3 to 6 months. She'd been going to all these different quacks and had tried all kinds of things, including using ash, none of which is going to help. It's only going to exacerbate the problem. And when she came to a telemedicine clinic, I mean, it was such a simple treatment. All she needed was to get on a course of antibiotics. So, and after that, she completely recovered after a course of antibiotics, and she's able to now, perform her daily duties, go to work without pain. And that's the thing with women's health. We tend to neglect our healthcare for many, many reasons, whether it is social conditioning or the fact that women have so many responsibilities at home. We keep neglecting our healthcare, and a lot more investment is needed in women's health, whether it's care during pregnancy, care for reproductive health issues. Women cancers is also a very neglected area. Breast and cervical cancers are some of the largest killers in the country. There's so much work that we have to do. Of course, telemedicine is one component of the solution. There are other components also that we need to address.
Yeah, talking about mental health, we in fact had a show, an edition where we talked about grief counseling. We had some of the social workers to mental health professionals coming on our show and talking about these things. So I'm glad that now from the physical health, you are also, focusing on the mental health area. Again, how do you really wish to go ahead? I mean, are there some specific plans to take it in a very focused manner as a wing, to your company?
I think our focus is to build integrated, comprehensive healthcare systems. So when we talk about mental health, COVID has definitely exacerbated it so much. We have been in lockdown after lockdown, and it can create a lot of impact.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
No, many of us, in fact, people who've gone through that, many of them, we hear and talk to them, have some or the other kind of anxiety happening, so which is evident.
Yeah, we're anxious. We're anxious about so many things. People are losing jobs. People are losing family members. I think the second wave was devastating. I don't think there's anyone left in India who hasn't lost somebody they know and love. And so we're seeing when patients call in, there's a lot of fear of death, fear of contracting COVID, lot of anxiety. So unless that is addressed, and telemedicine is a great way to access mental health. First of all, it lowers the barrier, and also because it's so private, that stigma that you have around accessing mental health, that can go down because you're doing it confidentially, you're doing it from your home. And I think even aside from COVID, when we work in tribal communities, we see a lot of mental health issues because there's a lot of dependence on substance abuse. There's a lot of use of locally brewed alcohol,
which are harmful. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only does that create health issues like liver problems and things like that, but it also creates mental issues in young people. People who are the strength of the country, and so we need to be really working on doing that. And telemedicine is a great way, whether it's having an app that you can use to connect with a psychologist, whether it's a phone line, or whether it's a health worker who you can go to, who can facilitate a consultation for you with a counselor. I think there are many nonprofits working in this area that are doing amazing work. And as a consumer, I myself have also used these mental health services during lockdown, and it has been so helpful to be able to keep yourself afloat.
Sure, Neha, but we wish you all the more strength and power. So, what is the company looking at in terms of charting out its own roadmap? What are the plans?
Hmm. Uh, we want to be recognized as a global platform for telemedicine. So when we started this out, um, half of the world's population lives in a place where it's hard to access a doctor. I mean, that's a staggering number. The scale of the problem is impossibly huge. We see ourselves as an organization born out of India, of course, but with global aspirations. That's also why we started our platform as a free and open source system, largely catering towards governments and nonprofits, because these are the primary healthcare providers in rural and hard to reach areas. So very recently, we started working with UNICEF and the government of Kyrgyzstan to provide this open source technology to them so that they can adopt it, they can customize it for their own country's use case and use it as a national level telemedicine system. And that's really our vision, where we can, not just in India, where we support governments, not just in India, but we also support them in other countries. We've worked in Philippines, we've worked in Haiti, in Syria, in many other countries where we have supported. Of course, our footprint outside of India is not as strong, is not strong yet, but that's our big vision, where we are able to provide global goods. These are free and open source systems that anyone can use to strengthen health infrastructure, digital infrastructure in their own countries.
Okay, now talking about, we have been talking to again a lot of doctors. So in terms of expertise, in terms of, even as you rightly said, as consumers, as people who are watching things, we got to learn a lot during this pandemic, especially the second wave. So we learned about medicines, we learned about what are the health care support, the caregivers, the whole caregiving sector and things like that, and how doctors have to also be more updated. The medical professionals have to really understand, because the virus was really surprising every time. So in terms of advancement of the medical knowledge and the understanding of it real time, what would you say about it? Is telemedicine a better idea to really keep up with the time in terms of understanding and dealing with the medical advancement?
Absolutely, and I'd love to share a great solution called Project Echo. It's when you use telemedicine for improving for providing medical information and knowledge, it's called telementoring or telehealth, really. So it's like a subset of telemedicine, and Project Echo is really a great forefront in that. These are like Zoom meetings that are held by an established institution like AIMS, or somebody who's hosting an esteemed doctor is hosting this for other doctors to come and update themselves. So Echo is doing great work. Big shout out to them. Also, there are many other organizations that are working in this space. So how do I make sure the latest information in medical care is being disseminated to providers, not just doctors, also ASHA workers, also ANMs, right? These are also healthcare providers who need the most recent medical information. We recently did a training in addressing vaccine hesitancy. That's a very important thing. Now, we have all gotten so educated about vaccines now. I think we can compare Covishield and Sputnik.
Tell us more about that, because we have different experiences. So we all are saying that please go vaccinate. That will save all of us, not only you. But what is your experience as a company going to rural areas and telling them, hey, you need to vaccinate?
Yeah, it's hard. There's a lot of hesitancy about taking a vaccine. There have been entire villages where a panchayat leader has declared nobody in this village will take a vaccine because somebody got a high fever after taking the first dose. So it's very important to work on health education and awareness. That's the first step. So we actually have a number of wonderful NGOs that we support, like Pratham, is a large NGO. We work with CRY, Child Relief and You. These NGOs have frontline workers working in rural communities, and we've been training them. How do you go out and access vaccine hesitancy in your community? How do you make sure people know that when you get that first dose, it's normal for you to get a fever? It's normal for you to have certain symptoms. And in fact, it's a healthy immune response. Educating people that you have to take both doses. It's not just about the first dose. And also helping them understand that, a vaccine can give you certain effectiveness. So against getting COVID, it's kind of like, the way we explain it, it's kind of like when you go out in the rain, you do take an umbrella. Does it keep you from getting it keeps you from getting wet, but not completely. But that you still do take the umbrella. You don't say that, oh, but I'm going to get wet anyway, so let me leave this umbrella at home. And that's what taking a vaccine is about, And that's how we go about educating people in taking vaccines. It's very important. If you haven't, please go get vaccinated.
Sure. I think that's a great message we all are trying to actually spread and in terms of awareness as well. Okay, now there could be some questions. So are there questions coming in? I think, Chandni, any question? Or anyone else for that matter? Yeah? Waiting. Mahika. Are they writing? You can come in and ask your questions. Sneh? Am I not able to hear them? Okay.
Ma'am, we can continue. They are going to write the question in the chat box, so then we can take it.
There to Neha later. We have asked all the questions, so there are no questions to ask now. Actually, this is what, as a host, I keep on doing. I keep on taking on all their questions as well. But Neha, anything else that you want to share? There are a lot of young women in our team. Also, we partner with Policy Center and General Lab Miranda House. So there are a lot of these young women. And talking about young women, again, consciousness about health, healthcare solutions. For example, telemedicine. We had a show about testing, for example. And right now we are saying test, track, and then go further. So likewise, telemedicine for young people, in terms of even a career, even in terms of volunteering or even working in such companies like yours, for example, what would be your message to young women here?
We need more women creating solutions. We need more women contributing to solutions for women. Whether I personally, it's both technology as well as policy are there definitely need to be more women. They're both male dominated spaces. And I think if there's one message I would love to share, it's that when women come in and start companies or start working in technology, we're able to create solutions that solve our problems. As a woman, I understand how hard it can sometimes be to take care of yourself. And that all of that ties into how you develop a product, how you develop a business. So and definitely telemedicine is a sector that is growing. It's going to see a lot of growth. There's a lot more job opportunities in telemedicine now, whether it's as frontline healthcare workers that facilitate services. So and that creates job opportunities for rural women. There's also for doctors, and we see a lot more medical professionals providing care using telemedicine. There's also, of course, job opportunities for technologists to bring forth things in this space. So if you're interested in volunteering with us, you can go to our website, intelehealth.org, go to our careers page. We have a lot of open job. We're really looking for the best talent. And in fact, I think we're in a talent deficit.
Yeah, we're also providing you these opportunities, and you should all be thankful to Neha for that.
Thank you for allowing me to do this shameless plug. We are we're really looking for the best and the brightest, because the reason why I got into technology for social good is because something that one of my team members says: with every line of code I write, I'm helping save a life, and there can be nothing more fulfilling than that, right? So if you are looking for a career that's fulfilling, that makes you feel like it's more than just 9 to 5, it's more than that paycheck, that when when you're working in healthcare and you're working in technology, you're working at the intersection actually of tech, health and social good, personally it's a very fulfilling thing. I feel very grateful that we are able to contribute in some small way.
Yeah, in fact, I am truly delighted also, because the kind of endeavor that we have here also, looking at not only gender or contemporary issues, social issues, current affairs, but with a tinge of social understanding. And empathy is our word actually here, and we use it quite often and say that we need to have empathy, and we need to also have solidarity when it comes to women, whichever sector they are in. And that's why we are truly happy that we are talking to you. Somebody, Mr. Praful Sinha, you can ask your question. Why are you shy? You're writing. बोलिए. प्रफुल्ल जी, बोलिए.
So you may unmute yourself.
Yeah. I unmuted. I was not very much familiar with this.
हमारे show में, please ask.
It's a wonderful session, and giving an insight into how telemedicine is reaching the rural areas and benefiting the millions in rural areas. So it was a wonderful session. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
So this is not a question, but a compliment to you, Neha. And on our show, some of these people encourage our endeavor, which is also digital, and they can only, have more faith in solutions like the ones that you provide. Is there anything that you would like to tell the audience here?
I think there's a question that someone asked about, people who are not in medicine, how would they go into healthcare? I think I'd love to take that question. We are a very interdisciplinary team at IntelliHealth. We have people who come from backgrounds in business, in economics, in marketing, in really anything under the sun, because when you work in telemedicine, it's not just about being that healthcare provider. You also need to make sure that the business model works. I think there's also another question down there about how do these business models work for telemedicine, especially in rural areas. So either, when you're working with say provider to provider, you have to think about how is this whole system going to be sustaining itself, right? How will financially it sustain itself? So there are many models to do that, and if you're business or economics major, would love for you to join our team and help us work on that. Right now, the way a lot of financing works in the telemedicine sector is governments paying for services because a lot of primary healthcare is free in India. It's a universal health coverage system. But we also have private companies working in social good companies working in as social enterprises, where patients are charged a little bit for the service and the rest comes from CSR. There's also models in peri-urban areas where the whole model is sustained through patients paying for services. They would have paid 200 rupees a visit to a quack, but now they're able to talk with a doctor and get good quality healthcare for the same amount, and you're able to run a financially sustainable model. So yes, if you have come from a business or economics background, there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of scope to innovate in this sector.
Maika, I can see your question, but I would like you to ask yourself so that we have a female asking a question here. Maika.
Hi. So I was not able to unmute myself, but this sounds really interesting, the work you're doing. So I'm an economics major, and this field of healthcare just sounds so interesting. And I was wondering how I can enter it with, my expertise and my economics background.
She just announced it actually, Neha, but you can repeat yourself, maybe benefits.
That was the question. So, thank you so much for answering that.
You're most welcome. Most welcome.
Okay. So any other questions? Somebody needs to be unmuted. Yes, they can be. Otherwise, we are going to the final part of this show.
So I would love to chat with you about the work you're doing, and like what I can how I can join the team. So
I'm sure a lot of these applications are coming to you post the show also. Any advice also
Wonderful.
started this post-COVID solutions also on telemedicine? Any advice for people? Because now actually at this stage, what we are reading about and getting to know is the post-COVID complications that people are now referring to. So in fact, there are a lot of sessions happening on that also as to how to deal with those. The whole fear also of how the third wave is going to be. So we are somewhere in a very a situation of flux right now, Neha, where we don't know the second wave, the third wave kind of thing, the post-COVID scenario. What would you say?
Hmm. Uh, so a lot of people recover from COVID and they have no long-term complications. They're fine, but for many people, even if you've had mild COVID and if you've had moderate or severe COVID, there are many complications that people can face. Lethargy, body ache, persistent breathing issues, cardiac problems. The key to remember is that you have to be proactive. Don't ignore such symptoms when they occur. Talk to a doctor. If you can't get to a doctor in person, call one of our helplines. We have a helpline called Swasth Sampark that you can call to get connected with a doctor to talk about post-COVID issues. It's very important that along with taking care of your physical health and well-being, you're also taking care of mental health and well-being. So whether it's whatever you like to do, meditation, yoga, exercise, it's very important when you're recovering from COVID to do all of that. And of course, we all have to be preparing for the third wave, as you very rightly mentioned, Rakhi ji. Right now, the reality is that about 15-17% of the country is fully vaccinated. We're a huge country. We have a daunting problem to it's a daunting effort to vaccinate such a large population, and we're all doing the best job that we can to get there. But until we get to either fully vaccinated, like at least 70-80%, 60% fully vaccinated and herd immunity, the reality is that there is a risk of a third wave coming in before we can get vaccinate a sufficient amount of the population that there is that protective effect. And so preparing for the third wave is very important. There are many things we can do on a personal level. I gave the analogy of the chhatri. It's just the same as that you're wearing a mask, washing your hands. You don't leave your umbrella at home when you go out in the rain. So don't leave your mask. Get vaccinated. Perform social distancing. Stay home if you're sick. And that's things that we can do at a personal level. As a community level or at a country level, donors should be investing in foundational systems to prepare for the third wave. We were very unprepared for the second wave, and I really appreciate that actually governments are really taking stock. There are a lot of task forces that have been created to plan ahead of time what is going to happen during the third wave. And be prepared, like keep hospitals prepared, keep oxygen prepared, also keep telemedicine systems in place so that patients can be moved to isolation centers when needed. When isolation centers are full, taking care of patients at home is the best solution that we have. So there's many things we can do as a society, as a community to prepare, as a country to prepare. There's also many things we can do as an individual. So these are just some of the things. And Rakhi ji, thank you so much also for Her World India. I love the work that you do here, amplifying.
As an individual, you are leading by example, truly. Here are you, Neha. You're leading not only a company but talking about health issues with such eloquence here on this show, and otherwise that the kind of work you're doing. I mean, earlier when we were trying to get you on our show, I used to hear that you're traveling and you're dealing with so many things, which is truly heartening for us. Already the kind of things that you've shared here on our show has gone home to many people. I think also the young people who might be contacting you now post the show, of so many people wanting to do so many things also. We need to capture that imagination. We need to capture that skill. We need to capture that inherent quality and capability that is already there, but we need to understand and utilize that. And that's where you are doing this. We in our own endeavor also at Her World India are trying to actually not only spread awareness, because even in pandemic we feel that a lot of rumors and myths which also float around, is not doing any good. We need to, do away with misinformation, lack of awareness, ignorance, or this gossip mongering, rumors. We need to do away with that and say, hey, this is science. This is the scientific way of looking at our health and the entire health system that the authorities are looking at. And I'm glad that people like you are really, really, truly leading from your example, because you're a company not only providing tech solution, but tech solution for social good, as you say, Neha. And I congratulate you for that. So thank you so much for joining us on a
And
Saturday.
thank you for amplifying the voices of women.
Well,
We need more amplifiers like you.
And I think this whole flavor of we two women talking here, talking about things that really matter, these kind of things should really be more and more. I think these conversations should be more in place. And I can only again congratulate the entire team of yours, team who's at work, and you a lot of strength and power once again. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. All the very best.
Thank you so much. Thank you.